Good morning. I'm going to share for just a few minutes on Father's Day, and then Vic's going to come up and share with us this Sunday. So I will perhaps be moving a little quicker through some of the verses that I had, just in the interest of time. But for the fathers, I don't know if it would be similar for you, but Father's Day is a day that especially, probably more than others, I will reflect on what are my priorities as a father. So I just wanted to share a few things that come to my mind, and hopefully it can be encouragement to you, and frankly an encouragement to others as well, not just to fathers. The first one that I noted, and I've shared this before, was my desire is to live a life that is attractive to my children. And when I say to live a life that's attractive to my children, that my spiritual life, that they would look at my relationship with Jesus and it would be something that they desire when they look at it. And when I think about what would make it something that they would desire, I think a couple verses came to my mind, familiar verses. John 10:10, Jesus said, I came that they would have life and have it abundantly. When they look at my life, do they look at that and say, my Father is living an abundant life? Similarly, in John 15, Jesus said to the disciples in verse 11, he said, these things I've spoken to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be made full. So how do we have the abundant life? How do we walk in a way that we could say, my joy is full? And the two quick questions that came to my mind was obviously John 15. Andrew, I think, talked about this last Sunday to the youth, so it applies to all ages. But are we abiding in him? Are we diligently seeking him? He's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And so just as fathers, but for all of us, because wherever we go, whether for me as a father for my children, but whether you're a university student and you're at university, or you're at work, or you're at home as a mother taking care of the kids, if we're in a place where he is our all, and we're diligently seeking him, and we're abiding in him and walking in obedience to him, then we can have that abundant life. And our children and the people that we cross paths with can look at that and say, what is it that you have that I don't have? I want to have what you have, Father, but it could be mother, it could be someone that you meet, right? And be able to say, you know what, it's Jesus Christ. That's what I have. The second thing that I noted down was just teaching our children. Someone this morning sent me a video. I was sitting there having my quiet time, and somebody sent me a little short on YouTube, and it was of a man that was dying of pancreatic cancer, and he was being interviewed and by someone I don't believe was a believer, and he was just talking about his children. He knew he had a terminal illness, and he was talking about his daughters were 24 and 22, and he was reflective. He said, you know, my desire always was to be able to walk them down the aisle. He says, I don't think that's going to happen. And he was it seemed obviously at rest with it. But then he talked about his son, who was 14 years old. And he was talking, that one you could tell was harder for him because he had not had the time he says, I'm giving him more instruction than he would care to have right now. And he was very much like, you could tell. But he just had a rest in the Lord. It was encouraging. He was just like, God will, he just said, other wise men and women will be there to instruct him. But you could just sense the longing of his heart was to be able to instruct his children. And to me, the verse that came to my mind, and it's for fathers, but it's for all of us, was simply that we would number our days. Teach us to number our days, that we would present to the Lord a heart of wisdom, right? And so when I think of that, and I think of just having a sobriety that as a family, we wouldn't get caught up in other things. I mean, it's great. We do so many wonderful things that God's given us to enjoy, and we can be thankful for them. But even this morning, I said to Whitney, hey, as we're driving and we're doing this road trip, I want to make sure that we have time. We're going to have all these hours in the van. I want to have time where we're having Bible time with the family. The first verse that came to my mind when I thought of teaching our children was Acts 1:1. the classic verse everybody thinks of when teaching your children. It's not the classic verse, but it was the verse that came to my mind because it says, Luke writing to Theophilus says, the first account I composed Theophilus about all that Jesus began to do and teach, he was speaking about his first letter, but the part was all that Jesus did and taught. And that's the one thing, that first thing when I think of teaching my children is that they actually see it in my life. It's not just what Dad taught, but it's what Dad did and taught. That was the first thing that came to my mind. But then just two others, right? In Ephesians 6:4, I'm going to read these just because we are moving quick. But fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Proverbs 22, verse 6, train up a child in the way that he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. But it takes wisdom. Proverbs 24, 3 and 4, by wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. I know this, and I'm sure other fathers do. Lord, what do I share with them? How do I teach them in a way that they'll understand? And help me, Lord. I need wisdom. I need your grace to instruct my children and to raise them up. And we know the last thing that I had was just walking in the fear of the Lord. Why? Because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And there's wonderful promises for fathers walking in the fear of the Lord, but for all of us walking in the fear of the Lord. But specifically to fathers, there are a few verses. Proverbs 14, 26 and 27, it says, in the fear of the Lord there is strong confidence, and his children will have refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, that one may avoid the snares of death. I want my children to grow up seeing an abundant life. I want them to grow up and saying, my dad taught me the fear of the Lord. He walked in the fear of the Lord. He would see evil and hide himself. Like, he didn't make provision for the flesh. It's a refuge for them. Jason shared this verse with me this morning. Jeremiah 32. It's specifically verse 39, but I'm going to read a few of the surrounding verses. This is speaking where God is speaking through Jeremiah about bringing God's people back from Babylon after he had sent them away because they weren't following him. But he was then talking about bringing them back. And he said, they shall be my people, and I'll be their God, and I'll give them one heart and one way, that they may fear me always, for their own good and the good of their children after them. I'll make an everlasting covenant with them, that I'll not turn away from them to do them good, and I will put the fear of me in their hearts, so that they may not turn away from me. I'll rejoice over them to do them good, and will faithfully plant them in this land with all my heart and all my soul. The fear of the Lord is such a blessing. Such a blessing. There are people that will say, you don't need to fear the Lord. The fear of the Lord, when you have a right understanding of how much our Heavenly Father loves us, and then also that he is worthy to be feared and to honored, and that he is holy, and that we walk in that right fear of the Lord. What a place to be for our own lives, but also for the lives of our children. How do we get the fear of the Lord? The last passage, and we talk about it, I think, fairly often, but Proverbs chapter 2, 1-6. Read it all. I would encourage you to read it all. But I could summarize it, right? That if we search for the Lord as for wisdom, it says, if we receive his words and treasure his commandments, and we make our ears attentive to wisdom, and incline our heart to understanding. If we cry out for discernment, all of these things, we're just crying out and we're seeking the Lord and crying out for that wisdom. It says, then you will discern the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. He is the one that gives the wisdom that we need. So 3 things, simple things this morning as we reflect on fathers and how we as fathers, but all of us can be a blessing to our children, but be a blessing to others. Living a life that is attractive to our children by abiding in the Lord and making him the one that we diligently seek after, by teaching our children in the way of the Lord. Not just teaching them, but doing and teaching And by having wisdom that God only gives, he is our wisdom, and how to do that effectively. And that wisdom comes when we walk in the fear of the Lord. And that when we walk in the fear of the Lord, it's a refuge for our family. It's a refuge for our children. Some simple things. It's a short time. Hopefully you can reflect on it and it can be an encouragement to you this morning. Do not grow weary in well-doing, fathers, mothers. I'll say mothers too, all of us. Don't grow weary in well-doing. The years seem long. Days seem long. The years seem long. At least, that's the way it seems. But we need to have perseverance as we raise up our children and instruct them in the ways of the Lord, and that in that perseverance we will see the fruit of it in years to come. I'm saying this a lot to myself. I will see the fruit of those labors, and in living a life faithfully to the Lord and also faithful in instructing them. And I want to continue to grow in this. This doesn't come as someone that's got it all figured out. This is the longing of my heart this morning as I reflected on Father's Day.